Hello and welcome to the sidelines of the Pondy Lit Fest. I am extremely privileged and I think also very fortunate to have with me today Dr. Vikram Sampath and Dr. Meenakshi Jain to talk about history. Um, and they don't need any introduction, so I'm not going into that. I mean, I'm just here to tap your knowledge and your inputs so that we can present something, your output, your points of view to the public out there. So to begin with, actually, both of you we could say, belong to the Nationalist School of History Writing. But the fact is that we need to first handle the Marxists and then we can move on. I don't want to dwell on them too much. So we all know that they dominated discourse, but I want to know where are they today, and do they have any influence at all? Is the new historiography content coming out from that school? So if you can both just
You see, for decades, the big four or the big five of Marxist historians, they dominated not just history writing, but they controlled all the institutions which were funding research, publishing research. So their dominance was so complete, it's very difficult to visualize that today. Now, as a result of the Ayodhya movement, one result of the Ayodhya movement, which they did not anticipate, was the total exposure and hollowness of their uh, contribution to history writing, because that exposed them as being only interested in covering up certain ugly facets of Indian history and trying to, gloss over those things, which was really exposed in the Allahabad High Court, verdict, which said that you were there to assist us, but you served as trying to hinder us in our work. Now, what has happened is that because of the relentless attack and exposure of the big five or four left historians, in the meantime, a new generation of left historians have come to the fore. But the main feature of their history writing is that they totally avoid discussing any political issue, and they keep a very low profile on contentious issues like Mathura and Gyan Bapi, which are exercising the Hindus today. So if you look at the historians at leading universities like JNU, DU, and Aligarh, they remain left historians, but they have shifted the focus of their research primarily on economic factors. So they have not taken up any contentious issue. They've kept a low profile. That is not to say that the dominance of the left has reduced, but the dominance of the mighty left historians is, I think, practically over. The problem is that in institutions like, publications, press, university presses, they still have a dominant voice. They can block any manuscript. So I won't say that leading publishing houses are open to what you call as nationalist viewpoints. By and large, they are not open. But the fact is that, Vikram Sampath's books on Savarkar have been published and done so well by the leading academic presses of Delhi University. So I will say that left historians are on the retreat. The younger generation doesn't have the courage or the desire to take up any contentious issues. They have left the field open to others. The point is how much we are ready to walk into that field which is being left open for us is something that we can discuss.
So Vikram, you talk about the freedom struggle. That Vikram Veer Savarkar has been that era. So how do you see the influence of leftist thought within the era that is your research? Actually, even Bravehearts, which goes back from Lalita Aditya up to 1857. And what has been your experience in trying to see how far the narrative still persists? Are they on the retreat? What is your experience?
So just to add to what Meenakshi ji said, I think it's very unfortunate that the one person on whom I think the leftist historians and the nationalist historians converge is James Mill. And they both castigate him and his history of British India. Even historians like Professor Romila Thapar say he was the first one who divided into categories of the Hindu, Muslim, and the Christian era. On the nationalist side, the angst with James Mill was that he looked at everything about India, her culture, her history with utter derision, and that it was something that was, of course, it was a colonial project to help the East India Company and later the British government to establish itself. But what is disheartening is that even when India was under slave rule, under colonial rule, you had the first branches, the shoots of nationalist historiography coming up then, where because we were subjects, particularly from Maharashtra, there used to be anonymous articles that used to be written to the newspapers refuting all of Mill's hypothesis. And it used to be written as the first Hindu, the second Hindu, the third Hindu, not even revealing it may be the same person or it may be multiple people. And that slowly, that agglomeration of work, starting initially from Maharashtra and then Bengal, all the thinking areas of the country. Then people like Professor V.K. Rajwade, Bhandarkar, then Sir Jadunath Sarkar, G.S. Sardesai. If you look at their R.C. Majumdar and others,
Radhakumud
Mukherjee, yes. So if you see their historiography too, it is, I think, according to what Kalhana had spoken about what Itihasa should be, it thus happened. Even Sardesai's entire compilation of the Peshwa Daftar documents, or the Pune residency correspondences which he compiled, or Jadunath Sarkar did this amazing work on Aurangzeb, and it is just stating things as they are without getting into the ideological tilt, extrapolating it to today's politics, today's societal issues, tagging everything to RSS, BJP. I mean, the usual historian trope that happens today. That was not the case with the nationalist historians. And I think some of us who follow on that path do precisely that. We just state things as it is without becoming judge, jury, and prosecutioner, which a historian, in my view, should not become. But then that space that was there for nationalist history writing was completely taken away by the left, particularly after independence, due to the Nehruvian consensus and, of course, Indira Gandhi's capitulation to the Marxist, to the left parties, and thereby to the Marxists in academia. They may be in retreat. I agree with Meenakshi ji. But I think there is also, Meenakshi ji, a group of what I would say neo-leftists who are not dyed-in-the-wool Marxists.
Yeah, that's what I said.
But popular historians, I wouldn't want to name anybody, but there are people who have sympathy to that viewpoint,
of course,
and who do not conform to the nationalist view at all.
Recently, in fact,
but very
on Twitter, I got blocked off by a lady who is doing her PhD in JNU. And she talked about a Hindu temple, which was a Jain temple, and she talks about the idol being uprooted and a Hindu idol being put into place. So I said, I just replied to her that, how do you use the word uprooted? From where have you got this? And her response to me is that by uproot, I mean one was replaced by the other. I said, don't you see uproot has a connotation? And then she blocked me.
So there are these, I think there are neo-leftists who have made their work popular through the popular medium, biographies, other means. And I'm sure your viewers are smart enough to know whom I'm referring to, whom all I'm referring to rather. So, but still, when you go to academic history, in all the universities, whether it is from private of Ashoka to government to Calcutta University, Jadavpur to Hyderabad University, the toxicity of the humanities department, in particular the history department, is so rife. So a lot of writing from the nationalist school is, I think, happening outside the academic setup. Because if you have to conform to the academy by itself puts prescriptions of boundaries. So if you are conforming to that, if you have to, I mean, it's you scratch my back, I scratch my back. Still, I mean, look at the way some reviews are written. Somebody who's written a book, their own head of department is giving an endorsement, and then they are writing a review in the newspaper. Still, I think media is still in the control of these people, the old establishment, print media at least. Electronic media is ambivalent.
Publishing houses?
publishing houses are changing their perspective
Okay.
only because I think they know what is selling now.
Yes.
Not that they have any ideological tilt or anything. Rukh hawa ka jidhar ka hai udhar ke hum hai. So wherever the wind blows, they want to make hay while the sun shines, which is good in a way, because it's making the work of a lot of people who are, as I said, outside the academia accessible, and that is what riles them up all the more, those who are within the academia, saying this was our last fortress.
Yes.
Politically, electorally,
Yeah.
and the country has debunked their
Correct.
ideology world over and in India also. And this was the last fortress we had of, actually they being the Brahmins of the field, so to say, the euphemism of Brahminism. And now these upstarts coming from somewhere else, from outside, how dare they, occupy our high citadels? And I think that is where the clashes and the acrimony, all the social media, fights, all of that is taking place.
But the publishing houses, the old publishing houses, by and large, they don't accept new perspectives. And what is happening is that new publishing houses are coming up, which are giving access to these new writings. So publishing houses, I don't think that the new right, what you want to call it, they have not been able to make a dent into that, except for exceptions like Vikram. But by and large, we see so many new publishing houses.
Now, one of the things that happens with nationalist historiography and historians, the reason why I'm so happy it's both of you is that, this whole thing about you're not a trained historian does not apply to both of you. So that is the reason why, when you write a book, they can't say that, your content is that
They
of
can
an
still
amateur.
say.
Because they can't really pinpoint on your methodology, on your primary data sourcing, on your referencing and things like that. So given that, both of you, I would say, in my opinion, are leading the classical historical writing in the nationalist school, where do you think that we are headed? Did you see optimism in the way your work is being appreciated? Do you see that your work is more, from the beginning, from the early days when you started to write till today, do you see an evolution in the way your school of writing is getting acceptance?
I think she's the banyan tree. I think she needs to talk.
think
Yeah, I think this transition,
smaller.
I think you'll be able to talk about.
I
so
think
quite a bit.
that we still have a long way to go.
Okay.
And the so-called right-wing writing that you talk about, it's actually not a school, it's individuals. It will be a handful of individuals, because a lot of the work that is being produced doesn't meet the standards of rigorous academic research. So the standards of rigorous academic research are only met by a handful of people right now. So I think that there is a long way to go, but the journey has begun. We have had about a dozen books that present alternative narratives on very important dimensions of our past. But like we could talk about R.C. Majumdar, Jadunath Sarkar, Radha Kumud Mukherjee and all that. They were a host of people, Professor Altekar, they were Bhandarkars. They were at least more than a dozen. I won't be able to count more than a dozen historians who have today, contributed to the writing of history. But I can certainly say that the first steps have been taken. And I think within the next 10, 15 years, the situation will dramatically change. What has happened is that the universities still remain the fort of left historians, the new left historians. They're not as lethal as the old historians, but they still know what they have to do. And they don't have that empathy with the indigenous culture and civilizational traditions. So universities remain by and large, the central universities remain by and large the preserve of the left, but it's the new left that has come in, the younger generation. That is my view.
Regarding acceptance of work is what I think you
Yes.
asked. So, so it's mixed. I think, thanks to social media and the proliferation of work that we've all been doing, I think it reaches out outside the confines of traditional, media spaces. As I said, print media is still very much against a lot of us. Some of them refuse to even write a review of the book, though I don't even know what is the purpose of a review.
I was just going to ask you that this classical way of, book writing, review recommendation, then that affecting sale, is that even that formula valid anymore?
It's no longer, in my view, because it hardly matters what review who writes. Only in the future edition, there can be a blurb coming out of it saying XYZ publication said this or that. Otherwise, it just massages the egos of some, pompous people that they have the privilege to sit and rubbish anybody's work of several years of research. I don't even know what the purpose of a review is. It's a subjective opinion of one individual who has the power to have his or her opinion in print, whereas all of us may have an opinion on a book. We keep it to ourselves or tell it among our friends. So these reviews apart, they have not contributed at all. Bookstores are getting redundant these days with online e-commerce, whether it's Amazon, Flipkart, Padhega India, the portals like this, which are selling books much more than bookstores are. I remember when my Savarkar book came out, again I wouldn't name the stores, in Bangalore, in my city, which said they refused to stock that book. My earlier books were there and they were like, we have nothing against the author, he's a writer from our city, but we do not want to taint our bookstore with the books on Savarkar. So, I mean, at the end of the day, if you see the profit and loss statement, you are the loser. I mean, you didn't stock a book that was selling well and it was in demand, and Amazon or Padhega India or somebody made up for it. So, I think this, in today's information age, one is people cannot, defraud anybody, because the fraud is also caught. Whether, we try to cover up things or someone else cover up things, there's always not that fact checker, but there are genuine fact checkers who actually can fact check whatever anybody is saying. Right?
Yes.
And the second is all these conventional media channels become so irrelevant. We use the online platform to propagate. There are podcasts. Where the recent podcasts that I have been part of, and Meenakshi Ji has also been engaging with these podcasts, and that is so creditable. Someone of the previous generation actually talking in a language and manner with youngsters. I think that says a lot. That kind of reach will not be there for any of these, there's a cabal of a bunch of people sitting in some JNU cafeteria and dissing something. It really doesn't matter. So increasingly, I think they become irrelevant, but I would not want to write them off or feel complacent that we have a lot of work, as she said, left to be done, and we have unfortunately not even taken the first steps.
Yes. In fact, one of the things that I wanted to follow this up with was, in fact, the quantity of quality scholarship. Now, one of the things that has happened, and to the untrained eye like even mine, the bias on one side has swung to the bias on the other side, saying we never did no wrong. So, do you have an opinion on the quality of scholarship that is coming out, and do you have an appeal as to the discipline that you want people to follow, so that you don't fall into the same trap of being accused of bias or ignoring certain if there is a source that says this is it and you have to have a nuanced view, I'd rather you work on the nuance than say that it didn't exist. So have you seen scholarship? Do you have opinion on
many people, they're in a hurry. They want to write in a hurry, acquire name in a hurry, fame in a hurry. So they don't follow the rigorous yardsticks at all. And some of the work is actually embarrassing. So it doesn't further anyone's knowledge, perspective or viewpoint when you print, because you are actually discrediting the attempts of those who are trying to create an alternative to the left historians. So these kind of works, they're not taken seriously. But in the long run, they can do damage, because people can say, this is what you people are producing. This is what is being done in the name of history writing by you people. But the people who are seriously engaged in the rewriting of Indian history from a non-left point of view, the people who are seriously engaged in this, I don't think any of them has been accused of doing shoddy research. The thing is that they keep quiet because you can kill by silence. But that keeping quiet also conveys a message.
You yesterday you spoke about handing out
Correct.
scholarship. You're
So
encouraging research.
Yeah, I would like to, because I feel very strongly about this, and I've spoken, I think, with you only several times, that, in all the so-called non-left gatherings and conclaves, there will be one Rona Dhona session.
Correct.
Irrespective of which platform, Marxist distortion of our history.
Correct.
And then everyone will whine and whine till cows come home as to how
True.
they will have a invisible voodoo doll of Romila Thapar and Irfan Habib and D.N. Jha and everyone will keep poking pins into that. Now that, which I think is a very, very self-defeating task. I mean, recently, I think a couple of months back, Professor Romila Thapar had a lecture at the India International Center. And all that, our side could do, so to say, was to do a Twitter campaign to write a letter to the IIC to cancel that talk. Now, I mean, this is
self-defeating.
Absolutely.
It will allow the person to further play victim card, and they will say, "Oh, this is intolerance." I mean, this is a person who is in her 90s and she has infiltrated the education system in such depth. One 1 hour talk in some IIC doesn't make any difference to anybody.
And
if
what is preventing you from writing an alternative?
Exactly. No, this one was, some of these people who wrote those letters should actually go to that lecture.
Correct.
Ask questions to her, counter her with facts, or even attend, make notes, come back and write a rebuttal.
True.
But that would require a lot of scholarship on your side to rebut a very eminent scholar of her, stature. That nobody wants to do those things. Simply whine. And I think what they did, how they distorted, I think since the time Arun Shourie brought out his eminent historians, each and every boy and girl of this country knows all their this thing. And Meenakshi Ji, in her book on Battle for Rama, the kind of depositions they did in the court and the fraud that they committed, we know that. So I think we should just go past that rather than be negative all the time, blaming somebody. They did what they did. Now history will ask us, what did you do?
Exactly.
For the cause of history.
Yes, and that is what we are trying to do.
Which is where we should stand up and be counted. And so there is no, as of today, I don't think there is sufficient alternative scholarship at all. So one can say, all these talks we do keep having. But today, even in universities, the civil services exams, the books that they are studying are the same. Bipin Chandra, R.S. Sharma, the Romila Thapar, Irfan Habib. We may not do what we want about them, but the young India is reading that. And civil servants are being trained in that version of history. So we can say replace that, but replace it with what?
Exactly.
Who has written anything sensible to counter that on any of this? One alternative version, an authentic version of ancient Indian history, which is where all the contentions come. Or medieval India, where there are problems. There is none. So I think to that extent, to create scholarship was what we announced. It's been a year with Asha Jadeja Motwani, who very kindly offered a scholarship in the name of her late husband. And this was the Rajiv Circle Scholars for History. And we gave out fellowships to about 7 people. It was a small pre-decided kind of a group, just to see as an experiment how this works. A substantial amount of stipend every month for 1 year. And the ask at the end of it was, you have to bring out a publishable manuscript, which should be thoroughly referenced, meticulously researched. The stipend was good enough to probably employ translators and all that of the primary sources. Do all of that, but it should not be in such obtuse kind of academic language that it becomes a book which is gathering dust on some shelf in some library. But it needs to be a commercial.
Let me just pause and compliment both of you on the way you write. It is a delight to read your English. It is so, there is so much scholarship, there is so much rigorous referencing, but then both your books are really a delight to read. So I had to say that.
Thank you. So it needs to be accessible research, meticulous research which is accessible. Absolutely. So that was a criteria given to all of them. There were 7 of them whom we chose. Professor V.N. Prabhakar, whom Meenakshi Ji had actually very kindly suggested, Abhas Maldahiyar, Anish Gokhale, Ankur Kakkar and Srijit Datta, who were here, I think, with the festival. and Prabal Roy Chaudhary and people like this, Arvindan Neelakantan, writing on a variety of issues which are very, very relevant. And now the manuscripts are slowly coming out, and through my own linkages with the publishing houses, hoping to get these published by the leading Penguins and Harpers and Bloomsburys and so on, so that these become mainstream books. So in 10 years, 10 books every year, there are 100 books which will come out. And that is the only answer, not Litfest, sessions where we are going to sit and, keep
definitely
crying.
not bash anymore. I think we are past that.
We are not doing that
yes.
also.
It's boring.
Yeah.
It's boring.
That's one thing we try not to do. We want to set narratives rather than only react.
Yes, we are trying to focus on new research.
Yeah.
But, I want to ask you both, and it's not because I want, you to again say, oh, 9 years, the government has done nothing. But if you were to, because the fact is that anybody who wants to even write history will have to have a learning process in school, then an unlearning process with your own intelligence, and then a relearning process because before there is any credible output. It's such a waste of time. It's not that when you learn the correct, you in fact, when I teach history, I tell them it's not about the story, it's about, please see how are they saying, what are they saying, what do they claim, how do they claim, that habit of being able to prove what you're writing. So now I want really honest, frank opinions of both of you, because I know you will not just criticize for the heck, but really your inputs and even your advice as to how this the government should go about it. We can't keep on talking about, oh, syllabus is going to form, oh, national education policy, 9 years on, I don't even know what it is. So can you I want you to speak about it. I think you're scholars you can't be touched.
No, that's not the point. The point is that this should be answered by somebody from the government, because we are outside.
No, I want to give you I want your
so
opinion.
I cannot say why the government has put it off for so long. It's beyond my comprehension. So I would not be able to answer why it has taken so long. But I'm in total fundamental agreement that it has taken too long.
Yes, and I think in 9 years, probably 2 generations have passed. And the saddest part is a lot of Indians will not, growing up, very few go back to history. The only time they read the history of their country is in their school. Class 12, most of them branch out into science or commerce or something where they may not read it. But the good part is very few of us read it well in our school time, and we forget those books. So the unlearning part may be easier.
But the positive thing is that if you look at social media, how actually it is replacing school textbooks. The number.
It's like you're finding the alternative route because the main one is either rotten or blocked. I mean that is not an ideal situation.
Not at all. But India is being decolonized in a very fundamental sense. The number of people, you look at their comments on social media, they're producing their own YouTube talks, etc. I'm not saying that corresponds to high scholarship, but it is, the mind is decolonizing.
But I think, Meenakshi ji, what becomes a problem, I remember the Chinmaya mission in Tamil Nadu. They had done a series of books. I think they rewrote class 6, 7 and 8 of history in a very factual manner. And I was talking to Swami Mitrananda there, and we'd gone to release those books in Chennai last year. So there, they're going to tell you about Aurangzeb as he was. Now, but 9th and 10th, they have to go back to the CBSE board or whatever. And there he's shown in the eyes of some of our Trushkes of the world, who will call him, a very secular person who protected more temples and he destroyed them. So for a young child, it becomes schizophrenic. Like, what am I to believe? Till class 8, I was told he was a bigot. Now suddenly the new book is telling me it is something else. So I think the biggest change can come only when the government, because nothing is as scalable as the government and the
absolutely.
Public education system. So ideally, but there too, I think governments have their agendas and their priorities. Same government,
and it will take time.
It will take
and also up to class 8, there is only that much complexity. There is only that much nuancing and that much detailing that you can do.
Correct.
There is so much that has to be handled at a higher level.
Yes.
And you can't say that you've you've covered it in the correct way up to 8th, and therefore all the correct notions are embedded in your
No,
brain.
for Meenakshi ji's point of India getting decolonized, I think that I completely endorse that. And in every aspect, we see that people have arisen now, and they
Yes.
become conscious.
Yes.
Now, for the next step, if the government still doesn't act, I think they will act only when it becomes a people's agenda. If they understand that it's a majority of the people have this as an important aspect of their agenda, then they will sit up and take notice, because finally a politician wakes up only when he or she sees that there is a vote bank, that his or her votes will get affected. This is a strong lobby of a demand, and this doesn't take some rocket science. We could send this one to Chandrayaan to the moon here, just getting 10 people into a room and putting them up for 6 months and say change what has been written. In 2 months of coming to power, the Karnataka government reversed all the books that
the reversal happens very fast.
Yes.
But somehow setting the agenda we're so hesitant.
So now, if India has decolonized, people have arisen irrespective of what politics is going on in this country or who's ruling the country and so on. I think people should start becoming, and through this, I mean, the viewers, if there is a online petition, use the same social media, petition.org, 10 crore, 50 crore people of India signing and say within the next 1 year, we want the books changed. Believe me, no government can ignore that. If you send those signatures to the PMO or wherever else, I'm sure they will all sit up and take notice. But we are also lackadaisical because it doesn't come in anybody's priority. As I said, it just becomes a very fashionable thing to sit and whine in conclaves, in literature festivals.
Nobody is interested in your whining anymore.
Yeah.
Correct.
So, they want action.
Yes. Like I said, the whole process is getting a little retarded in the process, retarded as in slowed down, because there has to be an unlearning process unless you have been conditioned by family values that despite what you're learning, like for instance, I think my generation, we knew better history thanks to Amar Chitrakatha. I knew
Yes.
V. Savarkar, and I still have that image of him, pushing that oil mill.
But look at some of the things they've done. Like, there was a parliamentary committee, so that it's bipartisan. It has all people of all parties. So this parliamentary committee, which was looking at, I think, history writing, they set out, I mean, democratization should have some limits. So they set out this thing that we want public opinion about what all things to change, and who ought to be included. And, I mean, if that committee gets 10 crore, inputs, who is competent enough to sit and sift through that? Someone will say, remove the Mughals. Someone will say, make it only about the Marathas. Someone will say, remove this, remove that, remove Tipu Sultan. In my state of Karnataka, the constant
how do specialists like you react to this sort of thing, that the layman can give an opinion? Because it is not being elitist. It's much wiser to take the advice from people who know.
Yes.
There is, after all, value to the careers you've had.
Those are all ploys to, I think, derail the process and make it slow, to show that something is going on.
And we are consulting.
We are consulting. It's so democratic that we are going to the grassroots, to every village and tehsil, and asking what you want to know about
history. As a democracy, we can live with Rajya Sabha members who are elected by the elected, I don't understand why we can't be advised by the academics who are already trained. It doesn't make any sense.
But it's a long story.
Yeah.
I don't know how long it will take. As outsiders to the process, I think people like Vikram, me, and others, I look upon it as our duty to contribute to writing meaningful history to the best we can. So I think that is our contribution. If we are not part of a system, that doesn't mean that we should stop our work.
Yes.
I must add to that.
Yeah, sure. But that is not, I'm going to have a concluding.
Yes, and we were having a long discussion this morning, and I think this is the first platform I would also want to make this public, to people, that for the longest time, I think I was also in that set of people who would whine, saying why the government is not doing this and that. But at the end of the day, be the change that you want to see, as Gandhi had said, or it's attributed to him. I thought about this quite a bit, and I'm actually in the process of setting up what could be a foundation for Indian historical and cultural research. And the idea there is to actually, and we were having a long discussion this morning about what all could be covered. Most of these people, these eminences, could be a historian of ancient India without understanding a word of Sanskrit or Prakrit or Pali or in Tamil, in which all those works were made. People have gone on record, medieval Indian historians saying we don't know anything of Persian and Arabic, and this is the only country where I think that is possible.
Yeah.
Where you depend on translated works and lost in translation literally by some colonial writer who has translated it. So my thought was a Sanskrit Pandit, someone like us at this age and stage to start learning Sanskrit and to master it, it may take a few decades. Instead, why not use the expertise of someone who's already a specialist in that language, say a Sanskrit or a Pali or Prakrit, and use a modern historian with our tools of and methodologies of research to work collaboratively on several projects, of contemporary relevance with a historical background, maybe even an archaeologist, a geneticist, to probably look at so many issues of caste endogamy or Aryan invasion, so-called, all of those, an archaeologist, a linguist, philosopher, historian, working together in small, groups, which could be incubated with various educational institutions and universities, and bring out, of course, academic papers and so on, but also equally important, commercially accessible, popular, publications.
Excellent.
And
yeah, this
so I just want to add that this will take time, but one thing is certain: there is no going back to the period of the heyday of Marxist. That hold of theirs on history writing has broken for a long time to come. The new way ahead may take a little time, but there are people who are thinking about these issues, grappling with them, and coming up with some works.
So now to conclude, I just want to basically, you have fought the odds. Can you just trace, your journey as to when the click happened that you decided that you needed to produce content, generate content, to break the narrative, and how did you start to write, and just trace that curve.
I studied medieval India, and for the longest time, there was no reference to the attacks on sacred sites, sacred centers. Apart from that, there was not a word in the curriculum for colleges. I taught in Delhi University for such a long time. And I realized that, there is a chapter on the Mughal policy towards the Sikh gurus. Towards the Sikhs. So the syllabus was the teachings of Guru Nanak and Kabir. So the teachings of Guru Nanak and Kabir is a very sanitized way of removing from the content the contentious relationship of the Mughal emperors with the Sikh gurus. Sikh gurus and Mughal emperors were coterminous. It's a very, rare case that Guru Nanak at the time of Babur and Guru Gobind Singh at the time of Aurangzeb. So it was such a turbulent period, and we teach nothing of it. So, these kind of personal experiences. And then the final clinching moment for me was the Ayodhya judgment of the Allahabad High Court. About a month after the Allahabad High Court judgment, somebody gave me a 90-page pamphlet. It was produced by the Aligarh Historians Forum, headed by Professor Irfan Habib. It was mostly written by Professor Irfan Habib. And I'm not taking it as a personal...
Historian's Letter to the Nation. Or something.
Whatever.
That called.
90 pages. And in that, Professor Habib, cast aspersions on the integrity of the ASI. And the excavations of the ASI were conducted in the presence of representatives from both parties, and every day's findings were recorded in a register which had to be signed by both parties. And after the Allahabad High Court, took cognizance of the ASI report, to write, and these are national institutions. ASI is not an institution which was set up by a particular party. It was set up in the British period, and it has done such yeoman service to putting together a view of our history on the basis of inscriptions, which is such a difficult task. So, this pamphlet said that it cast aspersions on the judges, on the integrity of the judges, And it said the Supreme Court has no option but to overturn this judgment. It is so faulty. When I read that pamphlet, actually, to be very frank, I was alarmed. I said, my God, is this possibility that Supreme Court can... Then I read the 5,000-page judgment of Sudhir Agarwal and the others. And then I began very detailed study of the Ram cult, the evolution of Ramayana, the way it spread. And then I realized what a hoax these people have played on the nation.
With no consequences.
With no consequences. You know, in any other country, they would have been asked to apologize. There's not even a word of regret. Everything that they said was proved to be wrong on the basis of statements made in court.
Yeah.
In fact, I looked up two of the lady historians who claimed about Buddhist and the Pranala is not there and all of that. And I did a Google search. They get invited and they give lectures even to this day.
They've got good jobs now.
Yeah, it is quite shocking to think that there is an ecosystem that keeps them viable, even to this day, despite what the court said against them.
So from that time, my journey began very, very seriously. And after that, I took up issues like sati, which have been used to denigrate Hindus, that you used to burn women. So then I did a detailed study and I was shocked to find that the cases of sati in India were actually so few, and how the instances were exaggerated beyond belief by Baptist missionaries in the 18th, 19th century who wanted the right to convert in India. So they presented India consciously as a living hell. And they wanted to convince the British Parliament that we are needed. The Christianizing mission is needed. So, these kind of things, they come up one after the other. Once you're on the track, the subject suggests itself to you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for the effort and time. And I think the beauty is that it is the findings that are creating the narrative. You're not writing because you want to disprove something. Yeah. But when you try to research, this is what emerges.
Yes.
In fact, you were talking about the Sikhs, and my class just read the Banda Bahadur chapter from Brayats, and the end. I don't think, after having read the truth of what they did to him, I don't, that is what it should be done. And I have a good fortune to teach, your books in a school where I am allowed to, and so, and
it must be only school in India,
including your text. So, Vikram, your journey?
Well, for me, it was rather, serendipitous. My journey started when I was 12 or 13 years old. Actually, I hated the way history was taught in, the school, mugging up all these dates and this and that. But then there was those days a television serial called Sword of Tipu Sultan by Sanjay Khan on Doordarshan. And in that, if you remember, the royal family of Mysore was shown in a very, very poor light. The Wadiyar Maharaja was shown like an obese retard who was dancing with the court dancer, and the Maharani as a scheming woman and all that. And so, and Hyder Ali and his son Tipu Sultan were usurpers of the throne of Mysore, which belonged to the Hindu royal family, which was there from 1399 and one of the longest reigning royal houses, the Wadiyar, till 1947. And there were lots of protests, and this is the 90s, when I think it was not a political protest, a lot of common people who were protesting because after so many decades of freedom, there's a lot of regard and respect for that family because they've done a lot of good work. The foundations of modern Karnataka and social, economic, cultural, evolution was again under the Wadiyars, and some very illustrious divans like Sir M. Vishweshwaraya, whose name is always very tough for some people to pronounce, Diwan Mirza Ismail, several others, Sheshadri Iyer, and all these people. So to have shown the Maharaja like that upset the apple cart for common people there. And I was looking at all of this, and if you remember that time the studio had also caught fire, and Sanjay Khan's face had got burnt. He had to get plastic surgery, and so the local Kannada newspapers were agog with, it's a curse from the Maharaja that you showed.
I remember this.
So I was just seeing all this, and that's how my interest in exploring the truth began. Completely self-initiated, self-motivated, more importantly self-funded for a very, very middle-class family who did not have other great means of survival. So every vacation meant going to Mysore, meeting, and this when I was in class 6 or 7, going to Mysore, meeting members of the royal family, the palace archives there, as a very amateurish family project. My parents, my maternal grandmother, everyone would accompany. And the idea was never to write a book someday or to, become some best-selling author. None of those. It was just for the joy of knowledge and discovery and exploration. And over 10 years is what I put into this, even while I was in my other, avatar of doing my engineering and all that at that time. The fascination with this place was still there. And from that one Maharaja and Maharani, my interest went to the whole dynasty. And I saw that there was not a single book written on the Wadiyars in modern time, which captured this entire capsule of time. So this Toni Morrison has this lovely quote: if there is a book that you want to read and it hasn't been written yet, you must be the first one to write it.
Yes.
So I thought, okay, let me put all of this 10-year amount of research into a book. And obviously that at that time I had not even done my PhD, so it was an amateurish effort, but it was an honest attempt, I would say, without agendas, without any kind of thing. It was just a exploration of truth, and all researchers, all historians are researchers of the ultimate truth as it is. So this was one attempt which started my journey. About 16 years ago was when my first book was published in 2008. And after that, one after the other, I thought it was a one book wonder and I'll go back to my boring corporate life, which I hated to be in. But later opportunities came up, and by chance, I wrote my next book on Gauhar Jan, the first woman of the subcontinent to record her voice on the gramophone in 1902. And that opened new vistas for me. I got a chance to do a PhD in history and ethnomusicology from the University of Queensland, where I had just gone to give a lecture. And they just said, why don't you put all of this research together in the form of a PhD thesis, which for the next 4 years, actually understanding the rigors of academic research, how to defend your arguments and your thesis. So that was the journey. And then, of course, Savarkar was because, he was all the time a part of public discourse, political discourse, so much pro and against him. But there again, if a young Indian man or woman wants to see what is this noise about, who the hell is this man? The last composite biography of his, in English at least, was written when he was alive in the 1960s, and that too by one of his acolytes, Dhananjay Keer, which was bordering almost hagiographical.
Yeah.
But since then till 2019, when my first volume came out, nobody had thought it important to reevaluate the man whose life is so relevant, whose ideology is in a political ascent today in India, Hindutva. Nobody wanted to academically evaluate or scholarly, evaluation of the man. So once again, Toni Morrison struck in, and so I thought, okay. And there was so much material that was gathered. I wanted it in 3 volumes, but eventually made it a 2-volume biography of Savarkar, and that's how the journey has been going on. Starting, I must somewhere thank Sanjay Khan for for that bad portrayal. Otherwise, I would have continued to remain one of the many other young people in India who hate history in school and never want to look back at it. I think a lot of students are waiting to get rid of this subject by the time they finish their 10th, because it is glut of stupid details, insipidly taught.
But the new history that is going to be written doesn't suffer from any of these.
Yeah.
It's written consciously, very engaging style, and shedding light on unknown facets. So the new history project will take time, but it will be worth waiting for. Many, many new subjects will come, and new light and new perspective. So it's not going to be like the old Marxist school, where the prejudice and the bias is so apparent. So that's what I feel.
I think to all the critics also, I think they should allow space for alternative versions. When it comes to history writing, at least, there is no one final view.
No.
Everybody is partially right, everybody is partially wrong also, because we are limited, if not by agendas or our biases, we are also limited by the availability of material sources, which may be partial, fragmented, destroyed. We just had a discussion on Kashi, which Meenakshi Ji had a session on. So much of it is destroyed in Mathura and Kashi. So whatever fragments are there, she may be writing something. Tomorrow some new discovery may overthrow that finding and a new research may come up. So I think that open-mindedness, even among the leftist historians, is very essential, and their cabals, that okay, there is another alternative view. Let us discuss this and debate it in the sense of academic and democratic manner, rather than vilify,
Block or yes.
block,
But
try
I
to
don't see
tarnish
I don't see
reputations.
that spirit
No,
there.
you don't see that spirit in any of the fields where they have. It's cancel culture.
Cancel,
That's
yes,
what.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't see that spirit of inquiry. That
I have been blocked by so many of whether it's historians or whether they are journalists or whether they are someone like me, on Twitter, So and then what I do is I actually take screenshots of my conversations, because when I teach logical fallacies, I actually use these live examples with my students, saying, see, this is where a straw man was created. This is where the goalposts were shifted. They are literally a playground for me to cull all the logical fallacies. I don't need to theorize on them anymore. It's so simple, to just find them all there. So if for someone like me, and I mean, I realize that, and then I get blocked. So if that's happened to me, so I can understand,
Blocking on social media is the simplest of things,
It
but
shouldn't bother you.
tarnishing
Yes,
reputations.
I
Trying
don't
to,
think it should bother you.
No, it doesn't bother me. It's just that my access to that fun is
Yes.
gone. But otherwise, it's but new ones crop
I
up.
think
but
history writing is now in a very interesting phase where new authors are going to come, bring new sources, bring new perspectives, and it's going to be much richer than what the dominant left narrative was 40, 50 years ago.
and I should add here that those who are listening, subscribe to this channel of yours. I'm sure they are on the nationalist side of historiography. For them to not do the same as the left did, of cancelling, please
so important.
have Shatru Bodh,
Yes.
read your opponent's work, read all of Professor
Absolutely.
Thapar, Professor Habib, who's ever worked, and also be clued in into the contemporary discussions around history,
Yes.
rather than live in your own frog in the
No, no.
well and say we know everything.
Correct.
On Twitter, have these battles,
Yes.
which including true Indology,
Yeah.
whether it's a person or a group of persons, when that ID had reached out to me through a DM, I told him, her, them, whatever, that please, you have so much information, please write a book. And that is the only way it will
Correct.
survive. Twitter tomorrow may just vanish, and all your material will go away. But we would like to, as authors in a literature festival, like to pompously believe that our legacy in the form of books
No, it is
will last for
absolutely
centuries
true.
after
Yes.
we are dead and gone.
See, now the point is that, whether you talk about true Indology or others, if there is a particular point of view, if you know more or less the trend that has happened, it's not difficult to Google and find out the facts. It's not Herculean, it's not rocket science either.
Archive.org.
So yeah, many.
Archive.org
So there are so
is
many.
so helpful.
Yes, exactly.
Because any text that was written, you can access, anyone can access.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that you should believe what we are saying. I always tell the readers and the audience, please check up these books on archive.org.
In fact, that is, I think, the benchmark of, secure scholarship, that you are open to scrutiny.
Yes.
And what you have written has a verifiable source. And I think that is a satisfaction I, as a reader, definitely get from from both of your books. So we have run out of time, unfortunately, but I'm so happy this discussion has happened. We have refrained from cribbing, and it would have been unfortunate if I spent time with both of you to just again rehash the old. So
And
thank
look
you
for
so much.
solutions and for
Yes,
positive
yes, absolutely.
stories of hope.
Correct.
We never crib. I've never cribbed. I don't think Vikram has cribbed because
No,
there is so
yes.
much for us to do.
That's
there's
true.
no time to crib.
There's no
That's
time
true.
to crib.
That's true. But that's the best part. I love the enthusiasm I feel from that both of you radiate. So thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you
to the
so
Pondy
much
Fest,
for
for
having
agreeing to do
us.
this.
Thank you so
And
much.
this is a dream come true, and this is pure fangirl moment, but I have to say it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've not met any school teacher like you. I have to end on my fan note.
Thank you so much.
So,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.